YouTube, what goes on? And welcome to Disavowed Action Figures, bringing you another Marvel Legends Top 10 list. Today, taking a closer look at the top 10 X-Men Marvel Legends Age of Apocalypse figures. That's right, I promised you this top 10 list, and here it is. I told you, Dante, I'd do it, and here we are, we're doing the list. A little bit of background if you're unaware, the Age of Apocalypse was a Marvel Comics X-Men crossover event back in 1995, where all of the X titles were canceled due to on-panel having the Professor Xavier character in the X-Men be murdered, which led to the rise of Apocalypse and a brand new reality where only the strongest survive. So far, there have been two, count them, two waves of Age of Apocalypse figures, 2020 and 2021. Our first wave consisting of the Build-A-Figure Sugar Man with the pictured figures there on the cross cell, and the second wave being in 2021 with the Build-A-Figure Colossus with the figures being pictured right there on that cross cell. We also were given, in addition to the Build-A-Figures, a deluxe figure that was a single-packed Apocalypse. So we're going to go through, we're going to rank all the Age of Apocalypse figures. I'll show you my honorable mentions first. We're going to show them all on camera at some point. Let's get to it. There has been 17 overall Age of Apocalypse figures put out. We have 14 figures that were single-packed in the two waves, followed by the two Build-A-Figures and the Apocalypse. So coming here at number 14 and number 13, or honorable mention as you like to maybe consider it, we have the Weapon X and Scott Summers Cyclops figures. And yeah, we needed both of these in the line. The problem is Cyclops just being very boring, to be very honest. The buck they used wasn't that great. So definitely he's coming at number 14. Number 13 is the Wolverine character Weapon X. As you can see, he's missing an arm. You can read the comic book and figure out why. But these were two very key characters in the Age of Apocalypse comic book. But unfortunately, as we were inundated with Wolverines, this was a huge peg warmer in 2020. And Cyclops, honestly, sat around for a pretty long time as well. So for being two very important characters in the storyline, they are coming at the bottom of the list here for overall Marvel Legends Age of Apocalypse figures. Coming in at number 12 and number 11, or again, honorable mention status, if you want to consider it that, are our Wild Child and our Morph figures. I specifically put Wild Child at the number 12 spot and Morph at the number 11 spot. So, yeah, again, I don't want to spoil anything from the book. There's a reason why he has this chain. I didn't like the fact that they single-released Wild Child in a wave. There was a reason for it we'll talk about later on, so no spoilers quite yet. Also, Morph, pretty necessary. This was a very unique character. This specific character design was created for the Age of Apocalypse comic book. It was not the Morph we all knew and loved from the animated series. They kind of took the name. Essentially, it's more of the Changeling character than it is actually Morph. But these, again, looking at the overall list of characters and figures we were given, just weren't strong enough, whether it's the buck or just the execution, to be put in my top 10 list. So coming at number 12 and number 11 are the Wild Child and the Morph figure, which means we're moving into the top 10 overall Age of Apocalypse Marvel Legends figures. Coming in at number 10 on the top 10 list is the Rogue figure. So again, most of the characters in this comic book storyline and then their Marvel Legends counterparts are redesigned existing characters who were in the original X-Men continuity before it got relaunched into the Age of Apocalypse. Rogue was a pretty basic figure overall, but I did like the head sculpt on it. The hair came out relatively accurate to the comic book. I think they could have done a little bit better job with the design of the actual buck itself. The paint here on the boots was decent. Overall, again, line work was okay on this particular one. Articulation wasn't anything outside the box, but it did fit the bill for what we needed, because we definitely needed a Rogue in this line. Number 10, Rogue. Coming in at number 9 is the Jean Grey Age of Apocalypse figure. Again, I will say one thing about this. I was never able to get this to stand consistently. I don't know if it's just me. Let me know in the comments. I do recall it being one of the coolest in-box figures because they actually crammed the Sugar Man's main, I don't want to say torso pieces, but main body pieces in the box with her, and actually looked more like the Sugar Man was the figure as opposed to her. She almost seemed like more the accessory. Again, we were definitely going to get the Wolverine as Weapon X. In the comics, without spoiling too much, she is palling around with Wolverine pretty often, so we needed to get both of them in the line. Mine had a little bit of a paint mistake right here on the, we'll call it the boobage area. Otherwise, again, it does depict the character design relatively well. It definitely looks a lot different. At the time this was released, we did not have many Jean Greys in general. Head sculpt was pretty accurate to the comic with the paint there on the forehead and the side of the face and the cheek. So number 9 is the Jean Grey. Coming in at number 8 is the Kitty Pryde figure. And again, before anybody gets on me and says, all the female characters are at the bottom of the list, I understand the optics of it, but here's the thing. These female bucks were not good at the time. Yes, now we have these great pinless and double-jointed, elbowed Marvel Legends female characters. Back at the time these were released, not that great of a buck overall. Again, it fit the bill, but my problem with this is that, as you'll see later on in the countdown, if you're unfamiliar with this wave and with this line, is that she almost seems like more of a supporting character or an accessory to what we wanted in a larger figure. I do like the fact that she still had the X logo on the belt. Overall, the build was pretty accurate to the comics. I don't hate the way it looks. It's just, again, the buck wasn't great, and, well, it didn't beat out the other figures, so there she is, Kitty Pryde. Coming in number 7 overall is our Magneto Marvel Legends Age of Apocalypse figure. Again, very, very key character. In fact, perhaps one of the most key characters in the storyline, so we definitely needed to get him in the particular subline here of Marvel Legends. I really like this figure a lot. The other head sculpt, I believe, came without a helmet, which looked even better. He is sporting the longer hair look Magneto has in the comic. I really do dig this a lot. I like the alternate look. Again, there's not a ton of Magnetos, at least not at the time this came out. The back of the figures you saw on the rotating base, the hair is coming out from under the helmet. It's just a good-looking Magneto overall. I really like this a lot. It's just, again, I prefer other figures to this one, so Magneto. And coming in at number 6 is our X-Man figure. Again, not going to spoil the comic book too much. This is essentially a clone slash version of Cable. But one cool thing that I liked about this figure, probably why it's pushed a little further up ahead of some of the other ones, is that he eventually found his way out of the Age of Apocalypse. And again, I won't say how or how he was used afterwards, but he did become a pivotal character in future X-Men and Marvel Comics crossovers in the future. So really, you could fudge him on your Age of Apocalypse shelf or on your traditional 616 Marvel Legends comic shelf. Again, the figure overall, nothing remarkable, just more or less a Bucky Cap buck. I did like how they put the effect on the eye right there, which you've seen the Cable in the past. Hair, relatively accurate, kind of wearing that 90s look outfit, which makes sense because it was smack dab in the middle of the 90s, but again, needed this as he was a huge character in the comic, both in Age of Apocalypse and afterwards. So there he is, X-Man. And now, working our way into our top 5 Age of Apocalypse Marvel Legends. At number 5 is the Dark Beast, Hank McCoy. This is a much more twisted, dark version of Hank McCoy than we had in the comic books. I think the only reason he's at number 5 and not further up, because he is one of the superior figures in this line, don't get me wrong, but I think it's because it's so much reuse of the Beast Marvel Legend we were also excited about that we got just slightly before this. There are some new pieces they put on this guy. The pants were completely new, but overall it is more or less the same figure, just with a different paint job and different head sculpt, as the original did not have the braids, but this guy was just BA looking, man. And the articulation, again, even though it was reuse, if you didn't have that original piece, had those great butterfly joints in the back. It could just do a lot with him. So articulation is great. He's just a menacing looking character and figure on the shelf. So again, number 5. However, he really could be probably considered further up. So Hank McCoy, Dark Beast, number 5 for the Age of Apocalypse Marvel Legends. Coming in at number 4 in our top 10 list is David Haller, aka Legion. I believe he was in the second wave release. I wanted him in the first wave's release because he is more or less the most key character who kicked off this storyline. Although he doesn't really have much of a role in Age of Apocalypse itself, he's the reason it's happening. This is such a fun character and figure. Oh my god. I remember getting this, I think, on Amazon. I was going to play the long game and decided to pick it up right away. It's just cool. The pose you can get it in. The character, essentially, in the comics is a crazy person. He more or less has, like, 500 personalities going on in his head. So just the fact that they gave us this really great pivot in the head to give us all sorts of crazy just looks with him. He could bend him around. I remember having to do like a backward crab walk at one point in an Instagram photo. And then he could also fudge him in as a mental hospital patient or something in particular for action figure photography. But he's just such a fun figure, and he was so necessary to have on the shelf. And he's another character or figure in the wave that can really be on the 616 original shelf or your Age of Apocalypse. So there he is, number 4, the Legion figure. Before we get to our top 3 overall figures, I could not get myself to consider the BAFs or the deluxe figure on the actual list of single carded top 10s. So these will be 3 honorable mentions before we get to the top 3 single carded. First being the original Build-A-Figure from the Age of Apocalypse, Sugar Man. This thing is freaking incredible. The problem was this wave got super cheap. It was basically clearanced very early and very often. Me personally, I remember running around trying to find all these at Walmarts. In one of my original toy hunt videos when I was first kicking off my channel here, but I was so pumped to eventually build this guy. I think I built him on a live stream on Instagram at Disavowed_12. But man, this thing was so freaking incredible. Just the amount of pieces that came with this thing, the way he was displayed in the box with Jean Grey, the tongue, the buttons, obviously the 4 articulated arms. He gets basically Thor's hammer to hold as a weapon. The character itself is just a weird, sick, deprived character in the comic book. So the fact that they went to this length on the Build-A-Figure was freaking awesome by the Marvel Legends team. So Dwight just knocked it out of the park with this guy. Pretty sure it was Dwight. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, if it wasn't Dwight still at this point. But yeah. Coming at the first true honorable mention is the Sugar Man 2020 Build-A-Figure. This thing was freaking incredible, and it took all 7 figures to build him. Coming at number 2 on our honorable mention list is the lone deluxe release we got in the Age of Apocalypse subline, which is Apocalypse himself. This thing, it was incredible. At the time I picked this up and I found it at Target on a toy hunt, I did not have the original Build-A-Figure version of Apocalypse that this basically takes pieces from. They did add in, obviously, a change in color. We got a cape. We got an alternate laughing head. We got this incredible little skull. And side tangent, I feel like one thing that COVID really cheated us of, at least as far as, nonsensical fun things like toys, not regular life stuff, is that supposedly Dwight Stahl had like hundreds or thousands of these things ready for San Diego Comic-Con to do some kind of crazy sick display. We never saw what he intended to do with all those skulls, which is unfortunate. Maybe one day we'll get him on the Infinity Equation and ask him about it and get him to spill the beans. But again, I like the Marvel Legends team put this as a deluxe figure because you needed Apocalypse as the main antagonist in the line. So yeah, coming in as the second honorable mention is the deluxe release, Apocalypse from the Age of Apocalypse. And our final top, mind you, honorable mention is the 2021 Age of Apocalypse Build-A-Figure Colossus. This was the best direction to go since we already got Apocalypse as the deluxe release, as he would have been a Build-A-Figure on his own. Instead, we got the Colossus. This thing is friggin' incredible. I'm pretty sure it was my best Build-A-Figure of the year in 2021. If not, it was damn close. This thing is so cool. He has that pirate look to him. He has the ribbons in the back, which I think were able to actually be moved around. We had a great head sculpt on this guy. He's freaking huge. You actually were able to take the suspenders off if you wanted to. I mentioned earlier being down on the Kitty Pryde figure. One reason being when we got her, we knew we wanted to get him because they were actually married in the comics. So she often would be depicted like sitting on his shoulder, things like that. So again, I kind of think this pushed her down the list a little bit, feeling more like an accessory to him as opposed to an actual figure unto herself. But this was such an amazing Build-A-Figure in 2021 for the Age of Apocalypse. So our top honorable mention is the Colossus Build-A-Figure. Okay, let's see who our top 3 Marvel Legends X-Men Age of Apocalypse figures are. And our number 3 overall Age of Apocalypse Marvel Legend is Bobby Drake, Iceman. Again, he's another just broken version of himself. I can't recall the actual details, nor should I share them for spoiler purposes, but he was just overpowered to the max in a good way in the Age of Apocalypse. Such a cool figure design for Iceman. We always got used to seeing him kind of being like smooth and almost kind of Silver Surfer looking in the way the texture looked on that character design. So he comes out of the gate, just this jutted ice all over him. It's on the hands. This thing looks great with any Human Torch figure you might have in your collection. Also, just as a side tangent, it's looking back in the retro days, back in the old Toy Biz days, I believe it was, they did give us some Age of Apocalypse figures, and one of them was Iceman. So having that in my collection and then lining up next to this guy just really gave me the collector's feels because it was just so much fun to have both of them in my collection. So coming at number 3 is a really cool version of Iceman. Coming at a close number 2 is Marvel Legends Sunfire. This thing is freaking cool. It's translucent plastic, so you can see the light from the back. It has butterfly joints articulation going on here. I've had this guy in so many cool poses on flight stands in the past, hanging out with whether it's Human Torch or again with a character like Iceman. They look very cool together, just building on each other's ice and fire type of motif. It was so cool. Picking them up here real quick. They did a nice job with the paint on top of the translucent plastic. I really thought that was very well done. The head sculpt, the fire on the head sculpt. Just even having the mask painted. I believe that is Japanese. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might sound dumb if I'm wrong. I apologize. But man, this thing was so cool. And again, pairing him up with either an Iceman or a Human Torch figure in your 616 shelf looks great. But as a Marvel Legends figure, awesome. He wasn't a super key character in the comic, but because the character design is, the figure design is so cool, he easily made it into the top 5, creeping in at number 2. So number 2 overall, Marvel Legends, the Sunfire. That leaves only one figure left at number 1, and let's see who he is. And coming in at number 1 on our Marvel Legends Subline X-Men Age of Apocalypse top 10 list is Sabretooth Victor Creed. The reason being, they very easily could have made this a Build-A-Figure and made us pay extra to actually go out and buy all the figures in a line. Instead, they made him a main line release. And again, earlier mentioned, the fact that they gave us Wild Child as a single release first kind of wasn't cool because if you've read the comic, they are essentially partners. We'll leave it at that. As you can see, their color scheme is very similar. The chain, which was originally, I believe, with Wild Child, was to tease that we'd eventually get Sabretooth. But the problem was, did they know we would definitely get Sabretooth? Like, what if they decided to cancel the line or cancel that wave? I'm assuming that far out they knew for sure they'd get it out there for the payoff of having both of them. But again, that pushes Wild Child down my list. But this Sabretooth was great. He's freaking huge. He's a really cool looking head sculpt going on. They did a nice job here with the collar piece, which I think is loose if I recall correctly. Yeah, it plugs into the back actually. But he looks great with Wild Child. Looks great in general. And again, they gave him as a main figure release as opposed to giving us to him as a Build-A-Figure, which allowed us to get the Colossus and that Sugar Man as the Build-A-Figures instead. So yeah, number 1 Marvel Legends X-Men Sabretooth. And there you have it. That is how I rank all the Marvel Legends X-Men Age of Apocalypse figures. Let me know down in the comments, what are your thoughts on this subline in Marvel Legends? I know the storyline itself is very divisive amongst fans, as my friends at the Infinity Equation podcast would agree. But they're a lot of fun to me. I like these figures. If you played a long game, if you played the long game on this originally, you probably able to get a lot of these at a very cheap discounted price. Will there be a Wave 3? Who are some figures you want in a Wave 3? I love to see a version of the 4 Horsemen Holocaust. He'll have to be called Nemesis. That's fine. I would love to see a Nightcrawler, who's more of kind of a swashbuckling version of himself than even is normally. I'd like to see a Gambit in this particular wave. A Storm, potentially, for a female figure. Someone down in the comments below, who would your ideal figures be for an Age of Apocalypse Wave 3? Again, I love the series. I love these figures. They have their own unique shelf in my collection. So if you're new, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's free for you, doesn't cost you anything, helps us grow the channel tremendously. Hit that bell for notifications. That way YouTube actually will tell you when we post new content on the channel, like our weekly toy hunts, reviews, and live streams. Leave a comment down below, hit that like button, and for daily toy content and daily toy updates, check us out over Instagram and Twitter at Disavowed_12. Hey everybody, if you're thinking about going toy hunting this week, please try to remember the 3 Ps of the toy hunt: patience, persistence, most of all, politeness. Take care, stay healthy, and I'll be seeing all of you at the pegs.